Panama Canal is a shortcut that changed the world, an artificial river across a continent, pulling the oceans closer and rewriting global trade. It looks like logic made visible. Locks lifting ships like elevators, steel and water working together. But behind this miracle lies a story that isn't on postcard stands. It's the untold horror and human cost. Years of brutal work, disease, disaster, and relentless ambition. Today, we'll uncover what it took to carve a canal through jungle and mountain, who paid the price, and what it costs to keep this artery beating in the modern world. Stay tuned. This is the untold human cost of a global shortcut. What does untold human cost mean? When we talk about the canal's human cost, we don't mean just budgets and deadlines. We mean the lives risked and lost, the families uprooted, and the workers who labored in conditions that would break most people. We mean the slow grind: heat, malaria, yellow fever, landslides, mud, and machinery that turned a grand plan into a daily fight. The canal wasn't built in a single sprint. It came in phases: an ambitious French start in the 1880s, then a hard pivot to a lock-based American project in the early 1900s. Different leaders, different designs, same brutal terrain. Think of the canal like a marathon run on a steep trail, in a storm, while carrying a ship's anchor. That's the scale and difficulty compressed into a picture. The French attempt. Ambition meets disease. The first major attempt belongs to the French, led by Ferdinand de Lesseps, the hero behind the Suez Canal. Suez was a straight slice through desert sand. Panama was different. Mountains, rivers, rainfall, and a relentless jungle. The French plan aimed for a sea-level canal cutting straight through country and stone. On paper, elegant. In reality, a nightmare. Workers faced yellow fever and malaria, diseases then poorly understood and poorly controlled. Mosquitoes were the enemy no one saw coming. Camps were overwhelmed. Hospitals became overwhelmed. Morale collapsed alongside budgets. Equipment stuck in mud, landslides buried progress, and the jungle reclaimed anything left unattended. The horror wasn't cinematic. No thunderous collapse, but daily. Relentless disease, endless mud, and a ledger that kept turning red. The American redesign. Locks, lakes, and a new kind of fight. The American phase changed the math. Instead of fighting for sea level, engineers planned a lock canal, giant water elevators lifting ships up to an artificial lake, Gatun Lake, and then lowering them back to sea level on the other side. But a new design didn't erase the old hazards. The Culebra Cut, excavating through the Continental Divide, was the canal's beating heart and its hardest problem. Workers dug through rock and clay that shifted and slid. Landslides were common. Progress could be erased overnight by a hillside deciding to move. Imagine building a sandcastle at the edge of the tide, and the tide is also a mountain. That's the feeling of the Culebra Cut in a sentence. Progress versus gravity, every day. It's free, it helps us dig deeper, and it keeps these untold histories alive. Work on the ground. Heat, hazards, and hard choices. What did a day look like for canal workers? Early starts to beat the worst heat, then machinery and hand tools grinding through earth. Steam shovels roared, rail cars carried spoil away. Drills and explosives cut into stubborn rock. Torrential rains turned sites into mud bowls. The sun cooked, then storms flooded. Food, shelter, and clean water were constant priorities that were often just barely met. Engineering in a living landscape. Slides, drainage, and water control. The canal is an engineering system inside a living ecosystem. Rainfall swells rivers, and rivers feed lakes. Soil breathes and moves. Slopes that look stable in the dry season can slump under wet stress. The famous slides of the Culebra Cut weren't rare flukes, they were constant threats. Drainage channels had to be carved and kept clear. Spoil had to be hauled fast before it became tomorrow's landslide. Gatun Lake, the canal's high heart, is both a reservoir and a route. Its water feeds the locks, and the locks carry ships. The lake's level matters. Drought shrinks capacity. Floods strain infrastructure. Every ship that passes uses fresh water, and fresh water is not infinite, even in a tropical climate. The canal is a water budget as much as a concrete one. The hidden cost is in the invisible balance, keeping the system in equilibrium day after day, season after season. The human ledger. Wages, segregation, and inequality. The canal's workforce wasn't a monolith. Skilled positions tended to be reserved for certain groups. Unskilled labor came from across the Caribbean and beyond. Pay scales reflected race and origin, and living conditions often mirrored the same lines. This wasn't just an engineering site, it was a social system with its own rules and inequities. For many workers, the canal meant a chance at wages not available at home. For others, it meant years of separation from family, in housing that was functional but impersonal. The untold part of the story is that economic opportunity came bundled with hierarchy. The canal made history, and it made systems that people had to live inside, whether they chose them or not. Maintenance. The canal never stops needing care. The Panama Canal isn't a finished thing, it's a living machine. Concrete ages, gates and valves wear, silt builds up, channels narrow without dredging. The canal runs on constant work: inspect, repair, dredge, repaint, replace. Locks are enormous and precise. They demand careful attention. If a gate fails, a system fails. Modern upgrades change the game, but not the rhythm. The expansion with larger locks added capacity and complexity. New basins to recycle water, new gates that move like sliding towers, new demands on electricity and sensors. It makes the canal more efficient per ship, but also more dependent on systems that can't be neglected. Environment. A shortcut through ecosystems. The canal is a human corridor through natural ones. Cutting through watershed boundaries changes fish migration, salinity patterns, and downstream flows. Lake levels affect forests. Dredging stirs sediment. Invasive species can hitch rides. Each passing ship is a traveler, and sometimes it brings unintended guests. Managing this means science and vigilance, monitoring water quality, stabilizing banks, restoring habitats, and controlling species that don't belong. Communities. The canal's shadow and its light. The canal brought jobs, trade, and a place on the global map. It also brought change to nearby communities, shifting land use, new roads, new businesses, and new pressures. Families moved for work. Cultures mixed. Some gained, some lost. The canal is a tide that comes with both opportunity and undertow. Local workers keep the canal running today. Pilots guiding ships, technicians maintaining locks, dredge operators reshaping channels. Their expertise is part of the canal as much as concrete. But communities also carry the cost of proximity, noise, traffic, environmental risks, balanced against the benefit of economic activity. Counting the bill. What horror really means here? Horror isn't just the dramatic word in this title. It's the accumulation of hard truths. People working in dangerous conditions, disease stalking camps before science caught up, landslides erasing labor, inequalities shaping lives, and a machine that never stops demanding attention. The canal's horror isn't spectacle. It's fatigue, risk, and the weight of decisions. The miracle is not that the canal exists. The miracle is that people kept going. global context extension. The Panama Canal isn't alone in the world of human-heavy infrastructure. The Suez Canal faced wars and closures. The Hoover Dam reshaped rivers and communities. The Transcontinental Railroad rewrote landscapes and indigenous lives. Big projects change the map, and changing the map always changes lives. The untold horror is not a single event. It's the daily grind that wore people down and the choices that asked them to keep going. The human cost lives in old records, in remembered names, and in the quiet pride of families who say, "We built that." If you found value in this deeper look behind a global shortcut, hit like, leave a comment, and subscribe to Megaphiles TV.